Okay, today I'll talk about my thesis about navigating gendered barriers and leveraging supporting conservation. This is applied research, which is could be like different from traditional academic research. And my core question is what can conservation institutions learn from women's everyday practices? So I would love to start my motivation from Mongolia. Um, During the wildlife research in Mongolia, as I was about to chop firewood, a Mongolian male researcher said, "You shouldn't be doing this. This is man's work." In the other case, before starting a wildlife research project in Mongolia, a Mongolian female researcher told me that I will focus on cleaning and cooking this season, so many colleagues will focus on equipment and research. So I was pretty sad to see this internalized gender expectation among women. And the last case from South Korea, before my talk, and an organizer came to me and told me that, "Oh, I thought that you are a woman, you are a man. Sorry, you are." He was surprised that I was a woman. And he told me that I thought you were a man. Um, so it was really, really frustrating. And I started looking at this dynamic from this experience. And these moments raise questions. Who is recognized as real conservationist and who is granted authority and visibility? So I asked two questions. First, what challenges do women face working in conservation in Korea and Mongolia? And second, how do women get support and exercise agency? So this research centers on women's voices and treat them as an active agent. So the photos on the top is landscape in South Korea to help you guys visualize. And the photos bottom is from Mongolia. So two countries differ on the surface. But South Korea, where I'm from, is highly urbanized and densely populated country. And conservation project occurs in human-modified environments. But Mongolia has vast grasslands and low population density. And nomadic history shapes gendered labor expectations. And fieldwork usually involves long travel distance. But despite these differences, both contexts show similar dynamics that gender shapes who leads conservation work, who does field work, who remain invisible. So as the photo shows, the photo's top is fieldwork photo in South Korea. In Korea, field sites are close to cities, but in Mongolia, field sites are in remote rural areas. But the public face of field research is male. In terms of women's rights, for some context, in Korea, feminist movements began as resistance to conservative Confucian norms. And there is really active young feminist movement in Korea, and there's really, really strong ongoing gender conflict. And there are quite, active discussions on gender feminism and gendered idea. But in Mongolia was used to be a socialist state under strong Soviet influence, but it transitioned to a democratic system in the early 90s. And there was an expansion of women's rights under socialism, but traditional gender role still persists. And Korea ranks, in many gender indices. Korea ranks lower than Mongolia in many indexes, like female research in science and gender gap, etc. And conservation field is usually often regarded as a progressive and inclusive field. But progressive ideas do not translate into everyday practice. Existing research shows that gender inclusion affects conservation outcomes. Across countries, women's participation strengthens conservation outcomes and community resilience. But actually, it doesn't need a justification, It has intrinsic value. But sadly, gender equity issue in conservation in South Korea and Mongolia has not been directly addressed. And also there is very limited research has been done. And there are also less attention to women's institutional experiences. So my research is filling this gap by creating space for women's voice. So I would love to talk about a little bit about methods. So I did semi-structured interviews, which most of EBSD students did. Yeah. So it allowed women to shape the conversation very, easily. And I talked with 28 women from 2 different countries and from all age ranges. But just, Mongolia has more participants in their 20s because average age is really lower than South Korea. And also this research involves 3 languages, Mongolian and Korean and English, which I'm speaking now. So it was so hard. Yeah. So don't do, international research more than 2 different countries. Yeah, it was my first academic research and it was pretty tough. But I worked with a female interpreter, a Mongolian female interpreter who doesn't work in conservation to make sure a safe space for participants. And I used inductive and deductive coding, and I translated all the transcripts in English first, and it was a mistake. Okay, don't do that. Yes, yeah. So that was my coding journey, and I did a photo voice, which Shay also did. And the photo voice is basically, participants can share their gendered experience by photo. And actually 11 participants shared photos, but photos from 3 people were excluded due to concerns about personal identifications. But I didn't analyze photos in depth, but I added visual context. So you guys can see from next slides. And interestingly, participants felt really hard to know what to capture. So I shared some existing or other participants' photos and experience, and they recognized shared struggles. So it's interestingly built like connection and collective empowerment that, okay, so other women also are getting struggling with same issues, which I am struggling in my organization. So it was like interesting dynamic. Okay. So I will talk about my findings from this slide. So I would talk about really terrible stuff a lot. So before that, I would love to share that many people in South Korea and Mongolia are doing amazing work in conservation. But I like to focus on a topic that has been widely discussed. So first, the first most common barrier was women's exclusion experience from informal male network. So this photo is actually from my participant. She created this photo from AI, which is really interesting. And she actually works at 100% Korean staffed organization. But I don't know how, I mean, it's just interesting. And yeah, I mean, yeah, no judgment. Yeah. And interestingly, only Korean participants shared AI-generated photo voices. So I think it's also really interesting to look into maybe in a further step. And also, this photo voice worked as a method to protect participants' identity like perfectly. So I really loved this method. So in both countries, men dominate informal spaces, and women are often excluded. But in these informal spaces, really important decisions are made. So I'd love to start one really surprising quote. So one participant told me that male colleagues sometimes went to brothels, 성매매 공간입니다. After fieldwork without female colleagues. So in Korea, informal decision space even include brothels, drinking gatherings, and karaoke. And organization budgets are used for this, for men going to brothels. And we have post-work drinking culture. And Korea was highest alcohol consumption country in Asia a few years ago. And there is like huge pressure to drink until drunk. And my participant said she was pressured to drink during the lunchtime, and she felt she was tested from male colleagues. And it becomes an informal space for evaluation and networking. And one participant shared she often felt sexualized in these Korean-style informal male spaces. And one participant also said in karaoke, junior women pour alcohol and dance and serve drinking for senior men as a hostess. And this photo is actually in Korea downtown entertainment district. So in one building, there are karaoke, motels and brothels, and private tutoring centers for teenagers. So, this blurs work and sex industry, basically. So it increases women's vulnerability. Also in Mongolia has strong drinking culture, which is central to social bonding. And alcoholism is like huge social issue in Mongolia. But women in fieldwork facing heightened vulnerability in drinking culture. Like one participant said, she felt really pressure to join informal drinking session, but she also encountered really strong stigma on women drinking. So they are like kind of like double standard on women. So this is country-specific male-dominated informal network, but it happens in any common workplaces in Korea. Yeah, and second pattern was fieldwork exclusion. So those are also photos from Korean participants, AI generated. It illustrates how fieldwork becomes a site of exclusion. So unlike typical office-based work, fieldwork framed as masculine and tough and physically demanding. So dominant masculine trait legitimate authority. Sometimes exclusion justified by claims that fieldwork is like too dangerous for women. I'm seeing that like few people are really nodding. And male colleagues also felt really discomforted with women changing clothes during fieldwork. So that became an excuse of exclusion of women in fieldwork, which is like kind of nonsense. And also there were concerns from their male colleagues, partners, that partners felt really uncomfortable with a mixed gender fieldwork setting. So fieldwork conditions intensifies harassment as well. So this quote is from Mongolia. And I found that there is a really clear and overt power structure, and it led to sexual misconduct really badly in Mongolia. So for some context, in Mongolia, fieldwork setting is in remote area with small, long-stay teams, a lack of basic protections like safe accommodations. So they share like small kind of yurts and tents for just like one or two male colleagues for 2 months. So which is like really vulnerable for women. And gender sensitive conditions were also really lack, like considerations on women's menstruations. But in Korea, field work closer to cities with shared field accommodations. This is like village of motels. But drinking culture extends into field settings. So, for example, actual sexual assault case in the National Marine Institute after drinking happened in a similar environment. And interestingly, one participant shared that marine field is really toxic and really closed. She kind of like assumed that perhaps marine field includes changing diving suits, in remote island settings, island field sites. So it was really interesting to see like how different field settings can affect women's work in conservation. So nearly all participants experienced harassment in some form. However, the institution didn't protect women well. So in Korea, early legal protection exists, but enforcement is really weak. And many institutions, national institutions, lack clear guideline on identity-based harassment. But in Mongolia, legislation introduced recently, but participants said she never have encountered or never came across any guideline or training before her international project involvement. And also interestingly, international mandates promote gender equity. In Mongolia, institutions are heavily dependent on external funding. So external requirements function as the main driver of gender-related practices. So I got many ideas of this part. So I will share my recommendation after sharing these patterns. And also like really, okay. Okay, so and the other pattern was really Asian specific culture, which is Asian hierarchies, like based on age seniority. In Korea, we have really strong seniority system combined with 연고. 연고 means 연고 refers to informal network based on shared ties, which is school, region, and mandatory military service. And these network shape jobs and fieldwork access and promotion opportunities between men. And interestingly, there was a really strong generational divide in environmental justice organizations in South Korea. few years ago, there was a huge scandal from former Seoul mayor Park Won-soon. Sexual harassment case involving former mayor, and he was a really, really symbolic civil society and pro-democracy figure. But there were divergent interpretations of the same incident, like senior men contextualize or defend the case versus young women framed it as a structural gender violence. So it led generational and gendered divide within organizations. But in Mongolia has a strong legacy of socialist era, so it creates hierarchical bureaucracy. So senior authority remains highly respected. So I found really strong tensions between old and young women, like based on democracy era and based on socialism era. And also nomadic and socialist legacies shape gender expectation that women should be independent and resilient and hardworking. So it limits open discussions about gendered barriers in Mongolia. So it was really interesting to find different dynamics. And also a big pattern was gendered role and gendered legitimacy. So all photos are from participants. So it shows how strong gender roles shape daily work. So first photo is in environmental justice organizations, and women are pushed to clean when men leave in snacking time. And fourth photo here, and every time I share this research, many people are really surprised by the fact that in Mongolia, female scientists are expected to cook for the entire team during fieldwork, like 2 months and 3 months. So basically, most of all participants shared these struggles with me. So I was like, at some point, got really tired of hearing this. Like, wow, you are telling this again. I heard a few days ago from different Mongolian women. And I also got this pressure from Mongolian colleagues, male colleagues, that Nari, you should make some Korean food for us. So yeah, that just intrigued me. Even, it happens that expectation persists when even when a cook could be hired within the organization budget, and it normalized in any conservation field. Oh, yeah. So sometimes legitimacy shaped by behavior, gender conformity, and appearance. And I heard really like miserable story that one participant reported that a female colleague envied her more masculine appearance, noting that feminine presenting women are more sexualized in conservation field. And I also found women's struggle in conservation. Women's career are limited by childbirth and care burdens. But in Korea, many women struggle to imagine life after becoming mothers. And if it reflected the lowest birth rate in the world. But in Mongolia, despite weak institutional support, the Mongolian women are actively considering of childbirth, which is like culturally really expected. And in hiring and promotion part, there were really persistent bias that women are not primary breadwinners. And it was used to justify lower pay and limited promotion opportunities. And some organizations still avoid hiring women intentionally, that women aren't suitable for fieldwork. I heard this from like 6 different participants. This is fact, period. Yeah, and also like family-friendly policies, it exists but remain insufficient or weakly implemented. So this is the last patterns that I found really interesting. So I found racialized and intragender dynamics, but it was not a dominant patterns, but it was like emergent dynamics. Like as a Korean and Mongolian women shared identity that shapes unexpected interactions. International conservation field dominated by Western white men. Asian women are often racialized as passive or less technical. And one participant told me that her survivor strategy was adopting a cool and westernized professional style. And one also Mongolian participant told me that foreign female leaders are less constrained by these social norms, like drinking culture. Also, I found really interesting intragender dynamics between women in two countries with limited resource and opportunity in conservation. Participants said they experienced hostility from some female colleagues, and she reported she has more male mentors than female mentors. So I found that is really interesting. Okay, I will move on a little bit positive side. Yeah. Yeah, it's heavy for me as well. Yeah. Okay, despite these barriers, women actively developed their own strategies and reshaped conservation field. Participants emphasized the need for a field that is safe and inclusive and respectable for all. So I also didn't expect I will study about this part, but it's also like unexpected theme after coding and assessing all the transcript. So I found that women employ various strategies to survive in this field. So they really navigated in male-dominated structure. So when women attempted to change institutional system and insisted on women's representation in decision making. And some women created their own NGO, like me. Yeah, it was tough to work in Korea. And yeah, women supported junior women within and outside the organization. And one participant, Mongolian participant, she invited students' family to the fieldwork sites to ensure their well-being. And women also modeled continuity by continuing fieldwork after childbirth, that women can work, for showing that women can work in conservation after giving birth. And also, like one participant, she considered reproductive strategies by egg freezing. And the other participants navigated career opportunities abroad. It sounds like me. And also they developed strategy to deal with these gendered risk and authorities, that they set rules and emphasized expertise, and they sometimes confronted gendered risk, but sometimes strategically avoided them. And also they protected other women in stigmatizing or hostile situations. And also I found really interesting emerging gender-informed practices. This is also hypothesis level findings, so I need to do more further research, but I would love to share my findings. I found that women applied relational community-based leadership. They involved local community members in conservation really, really actively. And they used conflict resolution skills and approached research really differently, and applied care-based team coordination. And one participant integrated activism through education, campaigns, and protests. And she shifted from aggressive activism to more inclusive approach. And she made really like good improvements in her work. And also one participant tried to change women's representation, like challenging stereotypes. Yeah. Okay, so I want to share more positive message from participants again. So these are also photos from participants. Participants expressed professional pride in working in nature. Especially like Mongolian participants shared many photos, so which reflected on a deep connection to the amazing landscape and land. And I could see that some positive and supportive environment do exist, like third and fourth photos. So based on my findings, I recommend 4 things for changing or improving conservation field in 2 countries. So I ended up thinking that gender risk should not rely on individual copying strategies. So it should be supported from institution. So it can be generic, but this basic support does not exist in the field. First is having mandatory fieldwork safety plans. So this is most requested part. And many organizations lack basic safety plans. So it should be required for funding and approval. So yeah, funders and donors can require this. So it can dramatically change, conservation field. And second is behavior-based training. Current training in both 2 countries is too abstract. So participants want scenario-based guidance. And third one is having clear codes of conduct. And it should be linked to hiring and promotions. And conservation organization can consider to ask inclusivity statement in job applications, and can consider having a clear reporting system or hotline. And the fourth one was like women were really excited about this idea. Like women in conservation need support from other women from in the field. So this mentoring system should be institutionalized and funded from organization, so it can reduce reliance on informal and unpaid work. Yeah. So these are, for preventing women from leaving the field, and it can potentially build safer environment in conservations. So I'm almost finishing, and I approach this research as practice approach. So I was inspired by Korean feminist Jung Hee-jin and Bell Hooks. I love her two women a lot. I came to understand the power of speaking and storytelling. So storytelling functions as self-reflection and awareness. So participants said they felt really safe, and participants were able to articulate previously unspoken experiences. And then they felt really validated. Yeah, I felt also validated a lot, like working in Montana, remotely meeting with Mongolian and Korean women every week, Saturday, 7 p.m., talking about this. this terrible stuff. But we ended up, like supporting each other and became a really close friend, and we really like, like share a lot, yeah, in just daily life as well, about life as well. Okay, so to connect with research with institutional change, I'm actually okay, and make findings more accessible. I'm making my okay, sorry. This research will be translated into policy briefs and public-facing material, which is my expertise. Yeah. Uh, and I am hoping to hold workshops to talk to make space women to vent their frustrations and to talk about how to make a better conservation field. So I'm actually talking with few organizations in two countries. Yeah, so this is the second photo is flyer and people in the Zoom. I'm looking for organizations to share research and co-organize workshops. So please share this with your with your supervisor. Yeah. Okay, so last part. So yeah, I'd like to express deepest gratitude for 28 women from no stop. Yeah, 28 women from South Korea and Mongolia. And me as someone, with an activism background, like conducting remote research far from my home country was really tough, especially last 1 year. So okay, don't look at me like that. Yeah. It's too emotional. Too emotional. Okay. So this research became an, like strong source of motivation to finish. So it also helped me continue my life in America too. So thank you so much for my EVSD folks and women's and gender studies folks and like my advisors. Three of you guys are here, and Mariana, yeah, she supported this entire journey, and Hillary was, my like colleague in international conservation field, and Arden is saying hi to people, and Beth to the back. And she created, a writing group for 1 semester to all graduate students. So I could survive in Vermont, like very depressing weather in Vermont. And that guy, Tom, yeah, we met in Mongolia, and he also studies about Mongolia, and he almost became a second a collaborator of this research, an active supporter. And he accompanied me to all conference, and he provided strength and support when I faced pushbacks from people. So yeah, many thanks to my yabo. And okay, yeah, thank you so much for people in the Zoom, and yeah, feel free to ask question in Korean, in Mongolian, yeah, whatever is fine. Yeah, thank you. Hello. Okay. Yeah, it's heavy, right? Yeah, I'm kind of really excited, now I can be free from this heavy. Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, like, yeah. I mean, I'm personally a little bit um worried about I'm like becoming feeling numb of this issue because I just like am seeing this transcript and this stuff like too long. So yeah.
Nadi, I have a question if there's no one in the room that has one. Nice job. Um, so how would conservation be different in South Korea and Mongolia if there was more gender equity present? Would it make a difference, and why?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's really good question. And thank you, Liva, our retired EVST professor. It's hard to generalize, but from my experience, I found that, women's leadership is like really inclusive and, especially working with community in Mongolia with herders and working with farmers in Korea, I found that they are really actively try to, include local communities in conservation project. So it can be, like sustainable and like um like can be really effective. Like for example, one participant she documented all contributions from community members in bird conservation in rural area, and she created some event or like exhibition. And like initially local peoples had a lot of like pushbacks or a resistance on this bird conservation project because they need to change their farming practice. But like that participants' active communication style, she included local community members to like active conservation collaborators, and I heard that how she addressed all the conflict and she kind of like distributed all the power, and she gave some like titles to local people. So it eventually, making more um, like support or like active kind of participation from
Hmm.
local people. So maybe, that could be good examples. I hope it makes sense. Yeah.
It totally makes sense, right? Because the outreach is possible to both women and men if you have mixed gendered teams, right, that are doing the work. So that makes total sense. I mean, there's some people who claim that women uh, researchers tend to ask different questions than men. Um, Might be something to look at. And think about, I mean, I love Bell Hooks. I think that's she's a fabulous resource there. But thinking about like the so what, like so what if this is the case? And so what would it be? How would it be different? Would be really fun for you to think about in your conclusion. But really nice job. Thank you for addressing my question.
Yeah. I want to add one more thought. So, maybe I didn't research enough, but didn't look some information enough. But I still didn't find any research about these issues in both countries. Yeah, but it was a kind of like like frustrated that I needed to cite many literature from European countries in America. And in Asia, I could find many literature from Southeast Asia. Yeah, which has done a lot of international project with international organization from Western Hemisphere. So that's why I need to look into women's barrier in conservation first. So if I have a chance to study more, I would love to, like study about how, women-led conservation organization approach conservation project differently, or how we can incorporate their like approach in conservation. Yeah. Oh yeah, Tara.
Great presentation.
I think.
So I know you have experience in South Korea, obviously, and Mongolia, and it sounds like you've experienced some of these dynamics yourself, but I'm curious what you heard from your participants that was surprising to you.
Mm, I mean, yeah, I kind of feel bad to talk about how terrible Korea is, but I expected people will talk about brothels. So that was no surprise. Um, but I would say like intragender conflict, yeah, between women. That like senior women are really mean to junior women because positions are really limited and there are a lot of tensions that, oh, this younger could take my position, could potentially take over my position, something. So yeah, I was like try to be cautious to portray or like, describe this idea, um not to, I don't know, like criticize women or try to see these patterns more like structural with more structural lens. Yeah, so for me that was interesting, um emergent findings. Yeah, yeah, Meredith.
I am so proud of you.
Yeah, yay, yay.
Um, I'm interested in something you said toward the beginning of the presentation about the woman's experience in the marine conservation. This is actually something that has just sort of come across for me too, brand like personally, not. I've heard from women in marine conservation and academia that uh, even full blown like sexual assault is very common. Um, and you kind of touched on this by saying like perhaps it's like the changing of the clothes or like the kind of remote locations or being on a boat. And so I'm wondering like, is there, and this is in the US context. And so I'm wondering like, is there any more context you can add from the Marine participants? Like, I'm very curious how this is playing out in these other countries.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for, paying attention that part. Yeah, one of my participants said, shared about this, and yeah, I didn't look into many literature, like specifically in marine or coastal research. Uh, yeah, but I vaguely remember that there was pretty strong Me Too movement in marine field in America. I guess in Alaska. Yeah. So in NSF funding stuff. Yeah. So I can also like look into that part as well. And also like my participants said, because marine field requires really specific skills, like diving the submarine something. So that's why like authorities or like senior men just like work like hundreds of years like in same circle close knit community, so it's just like toxic culture repeats and repeats and again because it can't be really how can I say improved itself, the field conditions. So I found that is really interesting. And also like, I guess Korea is like really small country. It's like 4 times smaller than Montana. So it's hard to find really wild area during field work. So I guess marine field is the only field that can be like extremely remote. Yeah. So it was really interesting, yeah. Yeah, Beth.
Recommendations. Um, and I'm wondering if there are
that already have models for fieldwork safety plans that could be used in these countries. With the full disclosure that I do very little with environmental studies, so environmental studies or fieldwork. But that was that, and then the same, almost the same question for bystander intervention stuff. There are existing models that when you're doing these trainings that you can bring in, or if that's something you're gonna have to develop yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I asked many participants, like especially Mongolian participants, because they are heavily project in Mongolia are heavily dependent from external fundings from different foreign countries. But none of them came across any like guideline or requirements like about the fieldwork guideline. Also, like, yeah, we can definitely adapt that idea. Like one thing I was really impressed by Vermont, University of Vermont in Rubenstein Natural Resource College, right? Where Tam is studying. They hold fieldwork safety workshop, and I joined. And they shared about they did bystander training stuff and social dynamics in fieldwork and the general kind of like fieldwork hazards stuff. And the last part was faculty panel talk on this issue, like faculty discussions on like how to make a field more safely, like inclusively. And I asked that questions that did you guys come across any like guideline stuff while you're in your entire career in international project or in like in domestic place? And they also said no. Yeah, so I found that this issues is really universal, and maybe it can be, you know, like a little bit off topics, but I'm also really interested in, you know, seeing different ethnic representation in conservation in America. So I would also would love to study further on that issue as well. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Beth.
It seems like it would be something to do with the funding groups to do, I don't know if you call it lobbying or whatever, or going in as not say you have to take everything, but consultative work to say, you have to make this a different space. And I really appreciate what you said about shifting the racial dynamics in these fields, you know, in the US and, you know, across genders and sexualities as well. So,
yeah, I mean, it can be personal story, but I was selected as a diversity scholar in Society of American Foresters last year, and I joined national convention, and there were many BIPOC people in conservation, and also international students, and there were many Asian students, and I found that we check in each other by asking, "Have you eaten rice?" And I felt really differently than studying here. I mean, especially in forestry college class, I was the only international students out of 120 students. And there were like 2 or 3 BIPOC people. And yeah, I felt really seen while when people asked, have you eaten rice, to just say hi, you know? So I don't know why I'm talking about this, but yeah, it's really important to have a regular rice. And please ask me, you know, like have you eaten rice instead of how are you? Yeah. So can I answer one question from Korean participant?
Let's do that and then we wrap up.
네, 두 번째 질문을 답을 하면 좋을 것 같은데, 네. 뭐, 사실, 그러게요. 그러니까 뭐, 많이 공감대가 형성이 잘 안 되고 있는 것 같기는 한데, 사실 그 페미니스트 알라이들이면서, 이 업계에 좀 문제의식을 가지고 있는 분들이 저의 리서치를 좀 많이 응원해 주기도 했고, 조직에 이런 아이디어를 제안하고 거절당하면서 굉장히 좌절하는 모습도 많이 봤고, 그래서 이제 궁극에는 이런 이야기가 저는 시작이 된다라고 생각을 하고, 공론화가 한국에서 시작되고 있는 과정이라고 생각을 합니다. 제가 그럼 요 내용을 영어로 좀 설명을 하고, 이제 끝낼 것 같아요. 그러면 이제 제가 나중에 또 따로 연락드리겠습니다. So she asked, how male researchers or male conservationists in Korea and Mongolia, how do they consider this issue, or how's their awareness on this issue? I can't represent all ideas from, male conservationists from Korea and South Mongolia, but there were many like amazing my male friends allies for this research, and he and I tried to organize workshop or suggest something to like conservation field or conservation organization which he is working, but he had like huge pushback on this, that it's just like two like new topics that people might be intimidated. Yeah, it's like too problematic, and people don't really, think like you think, like something like that. So he was really frustrated, and he wanted to keep his organization really badly. But I told to my friends, Korean friends, that I think we are starting this conversation now. Yeah, which is really late, but I can make this change in Korea. Yeah. So please, keep some, like good energy to change this.
The state of things in the US, I think.
Okay.
Non-news, yeah.
No.
But, and, which is maybe a negative, but that's the other thing is I think we're seeing a second upswell, similar to the Me Too movement, and would hope it would be more universal.
Yeah, but I like mac and cheese. Sorry, surrender. Okay, thank you. 고마워요.